Hello, everybody. It's the world of Formula One. Let's go racing with myself and, of course, the wonderful Delucia Daniels. Back in the Juan Pablo Montoya days, I liked him. He was gritty. He was, he had something quite special about him, and he was pretty good. He was pretty good. He was pretty fast. But Juan Pablo, right now, I don't know if you're sucking up to try and get one of your children into motor racing, but there's a couple of things I'd like to just pass on to you. Number one, get a decent haircut. Number two, get a shirt that fits you. Okay. And number three, what is it up that you got so much against Max Verstappen? What is up with Juan Pablo Montoya and Max Verstappen?
And it's really hard to hate someone like Max Verstappen and have anything negative to say because I feel like Max Verstappen was born to be a racing driver. Whether that is in GT3 or in Formula One, he was just born to do it. And seeing Montoya's comments about Max Verstappen and what he was saying, I was quite blown away by the audacity, to be honest with you, because
Exactly.
it came out of nowhere. It wasn't like there went into any context to it to go and attack Max Verstappen and his what did he say? Was it like a lack of respect for the sport, for Formula One, or something like that? I thought of that. Well, that's interesting, seeing how things are unplayed because Max has just done great things in other sport this weekend, and he's getting ready for the Nürburgring coming up this weekend. So I don't know. Maybe he just needs a bone to pick with somebody since he's just doing his own thing, and his kids are still not in Formula One just yet.
Just yet. Yeah, I'm just sitting there going, Juan Pablo, I thought you were bigger than that, and I thought you understood a little bit more, and I was just getting upset. Now, listen, speaking of Max, let's stay on Max. The Nürburgring this coming weekend is going to be racing in the Mercedes, for Mercedes, which is quite bizarre. Everyone says, oh, no, 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 and then there's talk about him maybe racing for Ford later on or whatever. Sold out crowd, Delucia. Sold out. Thank you very much. This is the power of Max Verstappen. Also, because Max is going there, their team has to go through 6 different qualifying sessions. It's quite interesting to see how it actually works. But there's still the potential, of course, for Max to get a pole position or whatever. We know that there are going to be 102,000 people at the Nürburgring, and there are going to be millions. I'm already trying to search where I can watch the whole 24 hours. I'm not sleeping over the whole weekend because of a name of Max Verstappen. So, everybody who's sitting going, oh, Max Verstappen's going to leave Formula One, he's going to leave this, he's going to do that, or whatever. Just sit there and just let the guy do his own thing. And then coming back to Formula One, Red Bull, believe you me, they don't sleep. They're getting that car better. They've already minimized the weight. They're going to be even looking more and more racy, I think, when we get to Canada. So don't discount Max Verstappen just yet when it comes to this Formula One title.
And I think with Red Bull especially, we did see that they had quite a significant amount of pace this weekend, this past race, and with them in particular, I was really looking forward to seeing how they were going to compare with everybody else with their upgrades. And so far, it's worked in their favor. They've had a significant improvement from where they were in Australia to where they are now. And I think in Canada, I think just the setup of how everything's going to be. If it's going to be wetter weather, we know Max Verstappen tends to thrive in that environment a lot more than other drivers. If we can add a sprinkling of rain like we were supposed to have in Miami, I think it'll just be a lot more spicy on track. And it'll be interesting to see how Isaac Hadjar, who was at the MotoGP race this past weekend as well, to
Mm.
see how he gets on and how he fares with Max. Because after the crash last time out, I know we said that, we were disappointed in Isaac, but I also still have a lot of faith that he'll be able to recover from the crash that he had. Right now, it is one of those things we saw with Franco Colapinto. Patience is a virtue. We have to be able to bide our time with these young drivers and really just nurse them into Formula One. And particularly with how Red Bull is working around the clock, I really am expecting some really great results from them coming into Canada. And it's a sprint weekend, so I guess we have double the fun.
Yeah, I think so as well. And also, you've got to feel, in hindsight, also a little bit with Isaac Hadjar, you sit and go, guys have been sitting out for 5 weeks. They get through qualifying, get to the race, second lap, bang, you out. Of course, you're going to be as frustrated as crazy because you want lap times, you want track time, and then your weekend ends very, very quickly. So, I know we still got another 13 days or what is it, 10, 12, 13 days and so many hours until Canada, but I can't wait. I think it's going to be very, very special. Now, the FIA have come out and said, oh, yes, okay, we have identified that there's a problem. So next year, 2027, we're going to have 60% internal combustion engine with 50 kilowatts more power, and then 40% electric battery thingy, whatever. It's not good enough. Formula One, FIA, it's not good enough. 80-20 should be the split, or 70-30 should be the split. You do not know what is coming. Yes, Miami did look better because we did see something where we thought that, yes, it would look like more like racing. Canada is a completely different circuit. We're going to go back to what we saw something like in Japan. Okay, regardless of the little changes that you have made, it is not good enough. When we get to Monza, when we get to Spa, when we get to Silverstone, we're going to have these exact same issues. And 60-40, in my opinion, is not a big enough increment for the future of Formula One. They might say, yeah, maybe in 2030 we'll bring it there, but do it now. And the whole thing about it is, with the greatest respect to Ford, to Cadillac, General Motors, who've come in, to Audi, who probably, and I say this, with no proof whatsoever, probably sat there and went to Formula One and said, yes, we will enter, but we want to ensure that there's X amount of electricity because that's the way of the future. And that's where everybody is going. As we've seen with all the car automakers around the world, they're all backpedaling and saying, no, we're not going electric by 2030. We've moved it out to 2050. So if Audi want to leave and the others want to leave, then let them go. Because that is not the spirit of Formula One. It's not the DNA of Formula One. Then stop, bending over to these car manufacturers or OEMs when Formula One is a formula of racing, and electric power is in Formula E. We don't need it. Am I angry enough?
A little bit, but I think it's warranted. I think we've seen in the last 4 races the disappointment that has come not only from the teams and the drivers, but also from the fans, because it does take away from the spirit of the sport. I do think I will give the FIA some credit in their modifications to the current setup to improve what we currently have. Next year, really, they are changing the hardware of everything. So they have now said that it is based more on driver expertise, which is what we've been saying since they introduced these regulations. That's all we really wanted. I don't know. I think I don't want to say I'm on the fence for it. I just think we should just go back to racing. It's really that simple. The less you can take away from the technology side of things and just let it be pure racing, I think we'll have a string of other things that we can add on that will make it even better, as opposed to worrying about electrical issues and trying to figure out harvesting of power. And Fred Vassy was talking, and he's the reserve driver for Mercedes. He did over 1,000 laps preparing Kimi Antonelli and George Russell for the Miami Grand Prix. And Toto Wolff had credited him and said the reason why Kimi was able to win was because of simulation work. It wasn't necessarily done on pure racing talent, because Fred had been able to map out exactly the points that Kimi and George needed to use the power and the battery and all those things. By doing that, it does take away from the ability of the driver to think on their feet, to stay alert during the races, to focus on what they need to do. So I think going into 2027, they still have time. I said this last time out. The rules are probably going to change again. They're going to be modified again at some point. But at the end of the day, we just need competitive racing and doing it in the spirit of the sport, because that's why we all fell in love with Formula One in the first place. By adding all these electrical components, which we already have, as you said, in Formula E, I feel like if you can do that there, let's rather keep Formula One, as pure as it can be, because that is the nature of this particular division.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not taking anything away from progress. We live in a world of technology, and of course, data is the most important. 40 years ago, when they raced, it was all instinctual. And they had, stopwatches that gave them times. Now there is millions and millions of bits of data that is coming out. And of course, that is how racing goes. I fully understand that. But you cannot have racing where your foot is flat in the accelerator and your car is going slowly because you don't have power. So that's That's where I think, and I don't think 60-40 is good enough going into 2027. But as you say, and I do think they probably will amend these regulations as the year progresses. Now, a couple of days ago, I was very, very fortunate enough to spend some time with Guenther Steiner, of course, who was the big boss of Haas and now owns or part owns the Tech 3 MotoGP team. And it was really fascinating because him and I just had all of these chats, and he is, believe you me, he is exactly as he is on television, and he's just a wonderful, wonderful man. And we had a long chats before we went on stage, and we were on stage together. And he came to South Africa just for a couple of hours, and then basically flew out to Le Mans, where they raced over the past weekend. But the two little things that I want to bring up that that were very, very interesting with Guenther Steiner. The one was 2021. The Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, because somebody had asked that actual question. And the other one was, I'd asked him, I said, with all of the drivers that you've ever worked with and seen in Formula One, and I was talking specifically who he had worked with. And I said, who do you think is just, was just a step ahead of everybody else? Guess who he said?
A step ahead of everybody else that he's worked with. I wanted to say Ollie Behrman, but I wasn't sure if he did work with him. I think he worked with him for a couple of months. But my instinct is to say Ollie.
Okay. Nico Hulkenberg.
Oh, your favorite, Sash.
But also I was surprised because, I mean, he worked with Grosjean, Magnussen, also super, super fast, Esteban Gutierrez, quick racing drivers. Yes, Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin. Those were tough times for Haas. But he says that Nico Hulkenberg is probably one of the best racing drivers he's ever seen. He says just been unfortunately being in the wrong place, the wrong team at the wrong time, which I found quite fascinating. Then the other one was, yes, 2021. What happened? And it was really very interesting to get someone where, yes, it's a closed forum, but his opinion, his opinion was that Michael Massey was under the impression or had decided that he didn't want the race to end under a yellow flag. He didn't want the championship to be ended under a yellow flag. And Steiner's words were, he basically just lost his marbles. Michael Massey just made decisions that he felt were needed at that specific time. He said to me, if Charlie Whiting had been there, the late Charlie Whiting, had he been the race director, he said that race would have ended under a safety car, which I found quite fascinating. He believes that Massey just sat there and felt we needed racing, and he decided to just make his own calls.
As controversial as 2021 is, I think, we all can agree that the correct thing to do was essentially to finish under the safety car, given the circumstances. But it did make for one of the most historic moments in Formula One. And it made 2021 the year that it was. So to almost end on that climax, for me, was the cherry on top of what was one of the most exhilarating years in the sport. But I do think, Guenther saying he lost his marbles is probably very true, because we all sat there. I think half the people were probably sleeping during the race, saying, okay, well, this is how it's going to end. Lewis, 8-time world champion. And then all of a sudden it was, well, guys, one lap of racing, Verstappen on new tires, let's really go racing now. And I think just in that regard, it made it what it was. So love it or hate it, it happened, and we can't go back, but we can learn from those mistakes. So I guess that's the only plus that we can take from it.
Yeah, and it was just interesting to hear his viewpoint, because I'd never heard that viewpoint before. It was always, well, he made a mistake, he did the wrong thing. But if you actually went into all of the rules and regulations, he actually did have the right to make those calls. But a guy like Guenther Steiner says he just sat there and he said he wanted racing to go along, and he decided that's the way that it was going to be. So it was interesting. But had a wonderful chat with him. Found out a lot, about the Nikita Mazepin and the Mick Schumacher Schumacher situations, and he was like, well, listen, the Mazepin situation, and he said straight, he says, fortunately resolved itself, as we know, unfortunately, and he said it, he didn't say it in a flippant way, because there was the Russia-Ukraine war, and because Mazepin was Russian and that Russian sponsors or whatever, they basically had to leave the sport. And then I asked him, I said, how difficult was it, to make the decision on Mick Schumacher, knowing with the pedigree that he comes from and the history, and there was always going to be controversy. And he said, unfortunately in racing, there's only so much time you can give to a driver in terms of racing and developing them. And he said it's not a finishing school. So listen, we're looking forward. Of course, Miami is still another week and a half away, and I think there's going to be a lot of information that's going to come out in the next week. There's, of course, the rumor pool is crazy at the moment, so we don't want to touch too much on that. But there's been some entitlement stories about certain drivers, and you just go, wow. Yes, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but these are Formula One people. They usually do come from a little bit of wealth or big sponsors.
And I want to be surprised by the person that these rumors are. But I mean, when you say George Russell, it's kind of like 1 + 1 = 2. He has been accused of being quite entitled in the race for the championship battle with Kimi Antonelli. And a lot of people have accused him of just almost having that privilege of being at a team for longer than your junior driver. And we're going into territory where he succeeded before. He is the reigning Canadian Grand Prix winner. The year before, on the penultimate lap, I'll never forget it, he got into a crash after leading the entire race. So he's done quite well here before. But I think if you look at where George is right now, it might be a bit of a sticky situation, because Kimi is on a really great trajectory and has carried that momentum from his first win 3 races ago to where we are now. I think the best part about where Kimi is right now, there is no pressure. The only pressure that he has is from himself, because he is the underdog in the story at the moment. Everyone had come into the season saying that George is the winner already. He's someone who we know has got the experience, the attitude, and has the ability to win a championship. But I also think perhaps George is kind of feeling like, do you know when you have to pretend that there's a bit of confidence in you and say, no, I'll come back. I know I'm going to be stronger. I've got nothing to worry about. I knew Kimi was great, but I can be better. It's that, but taken it into a level of like, I am the man. And I think that kind of comes across a little bit of standoffish to a lot of people. So am I surprised? No. But also, if that's the confidence that he needs to be able to win races in the future, then by all means do you. If you're that confident in your abilities, just show it on track. Let your driving do the talking.
I think you're spot on there as well, and I totally agree. Antonelli actually doesn't have the pressure. He's there. He's still trying to learn. Yes, he's driving incredibly. The fact that he's, yes, he's beaten George a few times, but just the fact that he's actually been able to match George and has progressed, and he's right up there and now is winning races, leading the championship or whatever. He's just sitting and saying, okay, well, next race, bring it on. And George now is going, yes, I am the man. I am the team. No, you're not. Even when Lewis was there, Lewis was not the team. Mercedes was the team. Now, here's a little interesting one. Toto Wolff's son is actually at Kimi Antonelli's father's go-kart school.
No, little Jack. He's being trained under the right people. I see this, what's happening, Sash. I see the circle of life happening. Who knows, maybe in a couple of years' time, Jack and Kimi will be teammates. That'll be a nice little family story for everybody. But I mean, it was bound to happen that their kid was going to go into Formula One and racing of some sort. I mean, Susie's a fantastic driver, and if you have parents who are in the fraternity, who is in F1 Academy, owning teams, I think it kind of makes sense for you to be able to just go into the sport and use the opportunities that you have. I'm just quite curious to see how things will fare. I mean, Kimi Antonelli's dad is such a teddy bear. I feel like he's so good with kids in general. So, I mean, I'm sure that Toto and Susie have made a good decision to put him with them, especially in the nurturing phase of things. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens to the kid in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, and watch out for Robin Raikkonen as well. This guy's very, very special. Okay, so I think there's going to be a lot of information that's going to come out this week. And of course, we'll bring you all of those updates when it comes to Miami for next week. But let's just end off with something very, very special, which happened over this weekend as well. The 6 hour of Spa, which is World Endurance. They use this very much as a precursor to Le Mans. Okay, and all of a sudden, BMW win for the first time in the hypercar category 1 and 2. Kevin Magnussen did an outstanding job in the last half an hour as a defensive driver to hold off the Ferrari of Antonio Fiorco. But the winner in the BMW, Robin Freins, Rene Rust, and Sheldon van der Linde. Now that, as South Africans, man, you got to be proud. What a day for them. What a day for BMW. And this is now going to shoot them up. And Le Mans victory is definitely not out of the reckoning.